We live in an age of relentless frequency. From the moment the world stirs from its brief slumber, it is greeted not by the gentle hum of existence, but by a crescendo of clamor. The digital pings that fracture our attention, the urban symphonies of machinery and haste, the internal chatter of a mind tethered to 1,000 threads of past and future. This noise is more than sound. It is a dimension we inhabit, a thicket of static that grows so familiar we mistake it for silence, for reality itself. Yet beneath this layered din, there exists another realm, not as an escape, but as a foundational truth. This is the hidden power of silence, a force not of absence, but of profound presence, a master key that does not simply quiet the world, but unlocks the very doors to higher dimensions of perception, understanding, and being. To consider silence is to not merely consider a lack of noise, but to contemplate the fertile void from which all creation springs, the space between stars that holds the galaxies in relation, the pause between heartbeats that sustains the rhythm of life. Imagine, if you will, the universe as a vast and intricate tapestry. The threads are vibrant, interweaving stories of light and matter, action and consequence. We are taught to see only the threads, to follow their colorful paths and believe that is all there is. But the true power, the thing that gives the tapestry its form and allows each thread to be seen at all, is the silent, unadorned loom upon which it is woven, the still, stable framework of emptiness that hosts the dance of form. Our lives are spent tracing the frantic, glittering threads, marveling at their complexity, often becoming entangled in them. We forget the loom. Mastering stillness is the art of returning our awareness to that foundational emptiness, not by destroying the tapestry, but by understanding its context. In that understanding, the picture transforms. What was a chaotic tangle of events reveals itself as a coherent, multidimensional image. The silence is the loom, and in its embrace, we see not just the pattern, but the pattern maker. This journey into silence is therefore a journey inward and infinitely outward simultaneously. It is a paradox where, by becoming utterly still, we begin to move in ways the busy world cannot perceive. By emptying the vessel of the self, we make room for the inpouring of the cosmos. The higher dimensions we speak of are not necessarily spatial coordinates in a physical sense, though they may mirror such concepts. They are strata of consciousness, layers of connectivity, expanded fields of meaning that exist concurrently with our mundane reality, yet are filtered out by our habitual engagement with the noise. Just as a radio must be tuned to a specific frequency to receive a broadcast, our being must attain a certain quality of stillness to perceive these broader bandwidths of existence. The static of our daily lives, our worries, our incessant doing, our identification with thought, scrambles the signal. Silence is the tuning. It begins with a simple, radical act, the decision to stop, not to pause with the intent of soon returning, but to truly stop as a cosmic gesture. In that cessation, something extraordinary happens. The world, which seemed so solid and demanding, begins to soften at the edges. The self, which felt so central and absolute, starts to reveal its own constructed nature. It is in this revealed space that the hidden power stirs. This is not the power of dominance or control, doubt, but the power of perception, of resonance, of alignment. It is the power to hear the whisper of intuition over the shout of fear, to see the synchronicity woven into chance events, to feel the subtle pull of a destiny that logic cannot map. It is the discovery that in the heart of stillness, one is not isolated, but profoundly connected, to the deepest core of one's own being, to the living pulse of the earth, and to an intelligence that operates through and beyond time. To embark on this exploration is to become an astronaut of inner space. We are preparing to dive beneath the surface chatter of the mind, past the sedimented layers of memory and conditioning, into the clear, dark waters of pure awareness. From that vantage point, looking upward, we perceive the dimensions of our lives not as flat, sequential events, but as rich, interactive fields of possibility and meaning. This is the promise held within the silent core, that by mastering the art of stillness, we do not leave the world behind, but we learn to navigate it with a wisdom that transcends information, with a peace that transcends understanding, and with a vision that sees the infinite in the finite, the eternal in the moment, and the boundless cosmos within the quiet human heart. The journey begins not with a step, but with a breath held in attentive reverence, with the courageous willingness to listen to what has been speaking all along, in the space between every thought, in the depth beneath every sound. We have acknowledged the noise, that pervasive frequency, and sensed the promise of what lies beneath it. To truly grasp the hidden power, we must now gently dissect its core, not with the scalpel of cold analysis, but with the attentive touch of one learning the anatomy of the sublime. The themes we explore are not isolated concepts, but interwoven threads in the same silent tapestry, each a facet of the same profound truth. That stillness is not passive, but acutely active, not an end, but a beginning, not emptiness, but a vessel of infinite potential. The first and most fundamental theme is the concept of silence as the primal canvas. Every expression, whether a thought, a symphony, or a galaxy spiraling into being, arises from and returns to a field of quiet potential. Consider the artist before the blank page, the musician in the breath before the first note, the universe in the timeless moment before the great flaring forth. This silence is not a void of lack, but a void of possibility, pregnant with all that could be. In our own lives, our compulsive thinking and doing are like frantic brushstrokes covering every inch of the canvas, leaving no space for the masterpiece to breathe, for new forms to emerge. Mastering stillness is the practice of consciously restoring the blank spaces, the margins of non-doing, allowing the intelligence of life itself, which operates in quiet pulses, to contribute to the painting. It is in these unhurried, unforced spaces that inspiration, often disguised as a sudden knowing or a graceful solution, chooses to appear. We learn that the most powerful part of any communication is the pause that gives it meaning, that the most crucial part of any action is the still point of intention from which it springs. Closely linked is the theme of dimensional transcendence through subtractive awareness. Our ordinary consciousness is like a flashlight beam in a vast, dark cathedral. It illuminates a specific spot, a worry, a task, a sensation, with intense clarity, but leaves the soaring arches, the intricate carvings, the sheer scale of the space in darkness. The beam itself is the noise of our focused attention. Silence is the act of turning off the flashlight, allowing our eyes to adjust to the ambient, multidimensional light that was always present. In that adjustment, we perceive not just the object of our focus, but its relationship to everything else. We move from a flat, two-dimensional experience of sequential problems to a rich, holistic perception of interconnected patterns. A problem is no longer an isolated obstacle, but a knot in a wider web, and its solution often lies not in tugging harder at the knot, but in understanding the tension of the entire net. This is the unlocking of a higher dimension, the shift from linear, cause and effect living to a synchronous, field-based awareness where meaning, guidance, and connection are perceived as a constant, subtle landscape once the blinding beam of our manic focus is dimmed. Then emerges the theme of the inner compass recalibrated in the quiet. The world is a magnetic field of competing pulls, social expectations, digital alerts, the siren songs of fear and desire. In constant noise, our internal compass needle spins wildly, unable to find true north. We navigate by external landmarks, chasing approval, avoiding discomfort, following paths laid down by others. Silence is the insulated chamber where the magnetic storms of externality fade. In that profound quiet, the needle of our deepest intuition, our soul's purpose, our essential knowing, slowly settles. It finds its orientation not to the shifting poles of society, but to the fixed star of our authentic being. This recalibration is perhaps the most practical magic of stillness. Decisions cease to be exhausting calculations of pros and cons and become clear movements of alignment. We are drawn to people, opportunities, and actions that resonate with our core frequency, and we find a natural, gentle repulsion from what is misaligned. The path emerges not as a desperate search, but as a humble following of a guidance system that was always installed within us, awaiting a quiet moment to be consulted. Underpinning all of this is the silent dialogue with the substrate of reality. Modern physics hints at a universe that is less a collection of solid objects and more a dynamic flux of energy and information, a vibrational field. In the realm of consciousness, many wisdom traditions speak of a ground of being, an awareness that underlies the transient phenomena of mind and matter. Silence is the protocol for accessing this substrate. When the surface waves of thought and emotion settle, we begin to sense the subtle movements of this deeper ocean. This is where synchronicity ceases to be a curious coincidence and becomes a legible language, where a sense of profound belonging to the web of life replaces feelings of separation, where creativity feels less like personal invention and more like channeling a stream from a universal source. We touch the dimension where the boundary between self and other softens, where the illusion of isolation dissolves into the experience of a shared, silent sentience that animates all things. In this dialogue, we don't hear words, but we gain understandings. We don't receive commands, but we are imbued with a knowing. Thus, the core themes reveal silence as a dynamic state of receptivity, a dimensional gateway, a navigational tool, and a medium of communion. It is the uncreation that makes conscious creation possible. It is the slowing of the frantic orbital spin of the mind that allows us to feel the stronger, steadier gravitational pull of the center. To master stillness is not to achieve a catatonic state, but to become like the eye of a hurricane, a point of immense tranquility and clarity, around which the energies of life can whirl without disturbing the core from which true perception and power emanate. We begin to see that the hidden power was never hidden in a remote cave, but in the most obvious place of all, in the space we were too busy filling to ever notice. Let us now travel beyond the conceptual and into the realm of story, where truth wears the garment of symbol, and the mind's grasp yields to the soul's recognition. For the hidden power of silence is not a theory to be dissected, but a landscape to be wandered, best mapped by allegory and inscribed by myth. These are not mere tales, but deeper symbolic narratives, each a mirror held up to the multifaceted diamond of stillness, reflecting light from angles logic cannot reach. There is a story told of an ancient city, renowned not for its gold or its armies, but for its encompassing celestial noise. It was a city of 1,000 silver bells, hung from every eave and tower, crafted to catch the slightest breeze and sing without ceasing. The citizens believed this perpetual chorus was the voice of the divine, a constant reminder of glory and connection. They grew so accustomed to the ringing that true quiet became a source of fear, a terrifying emptiness they called the Great Hush, and they filled it with ever more intricate carillons. In this city lived a listener, a soul who felt a peculiar hunger not for the next note, but for the space he suspected existed between them. While others mastered the art of discerning melodic patterns in the chaos, he practiced the heresy of listening for the silence. One day, in a forgotten cellar beneath the grand bell foundry, he discovered a single fractured bell that could no longer chime. Sitting within its mute curve, he experienced not emptiness, but a profound fullness. In that stillness, he began to hear not with his ears, but with his bones. He felt the rumble of the earth's turn, the pulse of subterranean waters, the slow growth of roots through stone. He realized the bells had not been connecting the city to the cosmos, but insulating it. Their noise was a beautiful cage. The true connection was in the foundational silence they feared. His journey became one of learning to ring from that inner quiet, to let his actions be tones born from the hush, rather than reactions to the outer clamor. He became a conduit for the deeper frequencies of existence, his life a melody composed not on the surface of sound, but in the depths of resonant stillness. Consider also the allegory of the lake and the sky. Upon the surface of a great mountain lake plays the entire drama of the visible world. The wind scribbles patterns, rain punctures the membrane, fish kiss the underside, leaves and boats trace their fleeting paths. This surface is our ordinary awareness, ceaselessly active, responding to every stimulus, identifying with every ripple and wake. Most beings live entirely on this surface, believing the shimmering, agitated plain to be the entirety of the lake. Yet beneath this theater of disturbance, the water grows calm, then still, then utterly transparent in the profound depths. In those deep, silent strata, a miracle occurs. The lake no longer merely reflects the sky, it contains it. The sun, the moon, the clouds, the vast expanse of blue are held within its heart, transformed, part of its very substance. The surface, busy reflecting the immediate trees and passing birds, is blind to this celestial inversion happening within its own body. Mastering stillness is the process of descending from the agitated surface awareness into those deeper, silent strata of being. It is not about ignoring the world, but about perceiving from a dimension where the cosmos is not just an external spectacle to be viewed, but an internal reality to be inhabited. From that depth, the surface storms are still felt, but they are understood as temporary weather, not the definition of the water itself. One gains the capacity to hold the stars within, even while the wind dances overhead. And then there is the narrative of the weaver in the loom of time. We imagine ourselves as the weavers, our thoughts and actions, the active shuttles flying back and forth, creating the tapestry of our lives. We grow weary, for the work is incessant, the patterns complex, and our hands are cramped from effort. We believe the power lies in the speed of the shuttle, the cleverness of the colored thread. But the hidden truth is that we are not the weaver, we are the loom. The silent, stable framework of conscious awareness is the essential structure that holds the warp threads taut, making all weaving possible. The shuttles of thought, emotion, and sensation are moved by hands greater than our personal will, the hands of life, of circumstance, of a cosmic intentionality. Our suffering arises from identifying with the frantic shuttle, believing we must control every pass. Our liberation begins when we identify with the loom, the silent, spacious, unwavering witness that provides the necessary condition for the tapestry to exist. In this shift, we do not become passive. A loom is not passive, it is foundational, resilient, and capacious. It allows for any pattern to be woven upon it without being damaged by the drama of the design. To master stillness is to rediscover ourselves as this apparatus of reception and manifestation, to provide a calm, clear space upon which the divine or the universe can craft a story far grander than our small egoic shuttle could ever plan. We exchange the fatigue of personal weaving for the quiet strength of cosmic hosting. These narratives are not escapes from reality, but portals into its heart. They reveal that the power unlocked by silence is the power of context. The listener in the Bell City found the context of the earth beneath the cultural artifact. The lake discovered the context of the cosmos within its own depths. The weaver realized the context of the timeless loom within the temporal act of weaving. In each, silence provided the dimensional shift from being a character in the story to being the space where the story unfolds, and in that shift, an unimaginable agency and peace are born. The noise binds us to a single, frantic page. The silence returns us to the library that holds all books, and to the quiet wisdom of the librarian who knows where each is shelved. Having wandered the symbolic landscapes where silence is both a forgotten city's truth and the depth of a star-containing lake, we arrive at the most tender and crucial juncture, the return. For what value has cosmic insight if it cannot hold the weight of a weary heart? What power resides in a dimension unlocked if its key does not also open the door to our daily lives, to the kitchen, the office, the lonely street, the crowded room? The practical integration of this hidden power is not a reduction of its grandeur, but the ultimate test and expression of its truth. It is the process of allowing the infinite to inform the finite, of letting the stillness of the loom structure the weaving of our everyday moments. The journey begins, as all true journeys do, exactly where you are. It does not require a remote cave or the abandonment of responsibility. It begins with the intentional cultivation of interstitial silence, the quiet sought and savored in the spaces between activities. This is the practice of reclaiming the margins of your day. It is the conscious pause before reaching for the phone upon waking, a three-breath return to the body while waiting for the kettle to boil, a moment of gazing out a window without narrative after completing a task. These are not grand meditations, but subtle acts of sovereignty, tiny rebellions against the tyranny of perpetual engagement. In these micro-silences, you are not doing nothing. You are performing the essential work of recalibrating your awareness from the external stimulus to the internal field. You are reminding yourself in dozens of small ways that you are not identical to your thoughts or your reactions. You are the space in which they appear. This daily, hourly practice builds a foundational resilience, a psychic immune system that filters the chaos without being overwhelmed by it. From this foundation, we deepen into the practice of active listening, which is the social and relational expression of inner stillness. In conversation, most people do not listen. They reload. Their inner noise of preparation, judgment, and autobiography is so loud that the other's words are merely triggers for their own next utterance. To enter a dialogue with mastered stillness is to offer a profound gift. You become a clear, calm lake for the other to see their own reflection. You listen not just to the words, but to the silence from which they emerged, the emotion, the intention, the unspoken need. Your responses, born from the quiet center you hold, become more resonant, timely, and compassionate. They are less about asserting a position and more about deepening a shared field of understanding. This transforms relationships, not through effortful persuasion, but through the magnetic power of profound attention. In conflict, silence becomes a tool not of withdrawal, but of supreme engagement, allowing the storm of emotion to pass without fueling it, so the root issue can be seen with clarity. In the realm of work and creativity, the integration manifests as the cultivation of fertile voids. Our culture worships relentless production, mistaking motion for progress. The power of silence introduces the critical wisdom of strategic incubation. After immersing in the data of a problem, the most powerful step is often to consciously step away, to take a walk without a podcast, to sit quietly, to engage in a mundane physical task. This is not procrastination, it is an invitation to the deeper intelligence. In the silent space you create, the subconscious mind, which operates in associative nonlinear ways, can begin to connect the fragments. Solutions, insights, and creative leaps bubble up from this quieted depth. You learn to trust these moments of arising more than the grinding hours of forced mental labor. Your work becomes less about pushing and more about allowing, less about personal brilliance, and more about becoming a clear channel for the patterns and connections that wish to emerge through you. The artist knows, the muse visits in quiet contemplation, not in frantic searching. Perhaps the most profound real-world implication is in the transformation of suffering. Pain is inevitable. It is a signal, a visitant. Suffering, however, is often the noisy, reactive narrative we build around pain, the resistance, the why me, the fearful projection. Stillness creates a buffer zone between pain and suffering. In a moment of acute stress, grief, or anxiety, the practice is to first find the silent anchor within the storm, the sensation of the breath, the weight of the body on the chair, the simple, undeniable fact of being aware. From that anchor, you can observe the pain without fully becoming it. The chaotic thoughts and terrifying feelings are seen as weather patterns moving through the vast sky of your awareness. They are acknowledged, felt, but not confused with the sky itself. This does not erase the pain, but it removes the second layer of torment. It grants a dignity and a spaciousness to the human experience, allowing you to bear what must be borne with a grace that is not passive resignation, but conscious, compassionate containment. Finally, the integration culminates in a subtle but pervasive re-enchantment of the ordinary. When the inner noise subsides, the world itself begins to speak in a language beyond words. A beam of light on a dusty floor becomes a cathedral. The steam rising from a cup becomes a miniature cosmology. The face of a stranger reveals a shared, silent story. This is not poetic fancy, but a direct perception of the dimension of interconnected presence that was always there, previously masked by the static of your own mental commentary. Life ceases to be a series of tasks to complete and becomes a field of communion to experience. Your decisions begin to align with a deeper rhythm. You feel the right time to act and the right time to wait. You are drawn to what nourishes your essence and gently repelled by what depletes it, not from dogma, but from the silent, intuitive knowing that becomes your primary guide. Thus, the hidden power, once unlocked, does not transport you to a different world. It illuminates the world you have always inhabited with a new, older light. It turns existence from a problem to be solved into a mystery to be lived. The practice is the continual gentle return to the silent source within, letting that stillness inform your speech, your actions, your creations, and your sufferings. It is the art of living from the loom, of being the deep lake, of listening from the broken bell. It is making your very life a testament to the fact that the most profound revolutions begin not with a shout, but with a breath held in attentive, world-altering quiet. We have journeyed together through the layers of this exploration, from the initial diagnosis of the world's cacophony to the core themes that frame silence as canvas, compass, and gateway, through symbolic narratives that cast this truth in the language of myth, and into the humble, tangible practices that weave this thread into the fabric of daily life. Now, we arrive at the culmination, not as an end, but as a point of integration, a silent summit from which the entire path can be seen as one continuous revelation. The hidden power of silence, we now understand, was never separate from us. It is the very ground of our being, the backdrop against the noise, the foundational consciousness that we are, prior to the thoughts we have and the roles we play. To master stillness is therefore not to acquire something new, but to remember something ancient and essential. It is the ultimate homecoming. This remembrance is the transformational catalyst. It calls for nothing less than a fundamental reorientation of identity. We are invited to shift from identifying as the frantic shuttle weaving an exhausting tale of personal achievement and survival, to resting as the loom, the silent, stable, and capacious presence that hosts the weaving of a cosmic story. This is the passage from ego to essence, from separation to unity, from time-bound anxiety to timeless participation. In this reorientation, the so-called higher dimensions are revealed not as distant planes, but as deeper layers of intimacy with the present moment. The infinite is not out there or after this, but is the very substance of the here and now, perceived when the obscuring clouds of mental chatter part. The unlock is finally a realization. You were never locked out. You were merely looking at the key, mistaking it for a problem, while the door stood eternally open, waiting for you to turn around and see it. The transformational call inherent in this understanding is both gentle and radical. It is gentle because it demands no violent upheaval, no rejection of your life, but merely a different way of inhabiting it. It is radical because, if heeded, it quietly revolutionizes everything. It asks you to begin valuing the pause as much as the action, the question as much as the answer, the being as much as the doing. It asks you to consider that your greatest contribution to a fractured world may not be another loud opinion, but your capacity to hold an unshakable peace. It suggests that healing may flow not only from what you say and do for others, but from the quality of silent, attentive presence you offer, a presence that becomes a sanctuary for others to remember their own stillness. This is not a call to communal silence, but to a community of silencers, of individuals who have touched this depth within themselves and thus carry a resonance that calms the unseen waters around them. Imagine a collective where decisions arise from the clarity of the inner compass rather than the heat of reaction, where creativity springs from fertile voids of contemplation rather than the arid pressure of deadlines, where conflicts are met with the spacious listening of the deep lake rather than the reflexive noise of the surface waves. This is the real-world implication at its grandest scale, a culture rewired from within, not by a new ideology, but by a recovered faculty of perception. So, let this conclusion be an invitation, a whisper against the inner ear. The practice is before you, not as a daunting regimen, but as the next breath. The next time you feel overwhelmed, lost in the noise of demand and desire, pause. Do not even seek silence. Simply notice the one who is aware of the noise. In that flicker of meta-awareness, you have already stepped into the silent dimension. You have already touched the loom. Cultivate that noticing. Protect it. Cherish it in the morning's first moments and in the evening's last. Visit it in the interstitial spaces of your day. Let it be the place from which you listen, speak, work, and love. The power is hidden only because we have been looking in the wrong direction, toward the fireworks of thought and away from the dark sky that gives them meaning. Mastering stillness is the art of turning our gaze back to that sky until we realize we are not the fleeting light, but the eternal container of all light. The journey ends where it began, with you here now. But now you know the secret. The door to the infinite is not thrust open with force. It is uncovered by subtraction. It appears when everything else falls quiet. Start by listening for the silence beneath your own breath. It is speaking your true name, in a voice older than time, calling you home to the dimension where you have always been and will always be, whole, free, and utterly at peace.